This is an extract from a story called Operation Birthday Suit. In this story, Jimmy intends to deprive Lucy of her virginity. It was 15th of July in the middle of the school holidays, and the weather was hot and humid. My 16th birthday had passed 22 days earlier, and today was Lucy's 16th, a date I had waited for a long time to come round. My plan, contemplated over many months, was to relieve Miss Lucy Rawlings of her virginity this very night. My plan, of course, would necessarily involve me losing mine, but it seemed that while most boys were anxious to lose it in order to gain bragging rights, most girls were anxious not to. This difference seemed to create a lot of tension, both generally and in my own relationship with Lucy. Anyway, the matter of Operation Birthday Suit, as I had conceived it, had not exactly been lacking preparation on my part. I realized that getting Lucy to agree to it was one thing, but settling where and with what protection against a teenage pregnancy and whether with parental consent or parental ignorance was another. Given these obstacles, I was convinced that most of the boys I knew who claimed to have lost theirs were lying, as was evidenced by their complete lack of specifics when challenged about their boasts. The point that appealed to me was that such a notable event in the life of a teenager should be accompanied by proper circumstances. It should not, for example, take place behind the cycle sheds nor on a remote part of Rosewood Common. Added to this consideration was the fact that Lucy was being evasive about the issue, which was to me an indication that, as often, she needed to be manipulated in the right direction. Hence, Operation Birthday Suit, I decided, required both complexity in planning and audacity in execution. Operation Birthday Suit's success depended on my ability to foresee and forestall the objections Lucy might well raise. She might, for example, say it should only happen with parental consent, that it should only happen at her house, that some suitable protective measures needed to be in place, and or that she had to feel comfortable with it. If these objections could be answered convincingly, Lucy would be boxed more and more into a corner, and her case for delay would, I hoped, be fatally weakened. With all this in mind, I decided to go down a route based on the principle that had served me well, namely that the shortest distance between 2 points was a straight line. So my first port of call had been that fount of love, wisdom, and feminine insight, my dear mother. She was reading a book in the lounge at lunchtime a few days after my birthday, when I brought her a cup of tea and a cupcake. I have to say that Mum was pretty good at reading my mind. Fair enough, considering she had known me ever since she gave birth to me, whereas my acquaintance with myself was what Rosie called an ongoing project. Anyway, her response was actually pretty straightforward, so I think I know where my personality comes from. Thanks, love, she said as I put down the tea and cupcake in front of her. And what is it you want this time? I was a bit taken aback at this lack of appreciation of my good intentions, but being taken aback was something I generally took well in my stride. Well, Mum, since you ask, my flow of words was interrupted by the thought that I had not really considered how to express myself on the matter that concerned me. The thing is, Mum, it's about Lucy. She took a sip of her tea. And? Nice girl. What about her? Well, I was thinking that she is a bit less mature than me. Less mature? Are you sure about that, Jimmy? To be honest, some might say it is exactly the other way round. Well, thanks a bunch for the parental endorsement, Mum. You're most welcome. I think what you're trying to tell me, Jimmy, is that you want to have sex with her. How did you... Well, I suppose I was actually thinking I would not be averse to relieving her of her virginity, so to speak. So to speak. Well, I had noticed that speaking was not an unfamiliar activity with my second-born, and I suppose feelings of that kind in a 16-year-old boy are not unknown. But to address your issue more directly, Jimmy, it has probably not escaped your notice that it takes two to tango, so to speak. What is the view of the senorita in question on this situation? Well, Mum, as of right now, I have not discussed it with her, at least not recently, but she has taken the position that she has not taken a position yet. And it's shortly her 16th birthday. The thing is, if I can tell her that parental consent and advice have been secured, then she might be amenable to taking a position on the matter. You mean she might say yes? Exactly, Mum. Well, I suppose things have changed since your father and I were young. Apparently, we now live in swinging Britain where anything goes, including 16-year-olds having sex and even asking their parents about it. But look, Jimmy, in Lucy's case, it really is for her parents to say, and my advice would be to ask Lucy to ask her mum about it. Prophylaxis does need parental consent. Okay, Mum, but who is this Phil Axis? What does he have to do with it? I'm referring, son, to prophylactic measures. In other words, she needs to go on the pill. And that is going to happen only if it is going to be a regular occurrence. Big decision for Lucy, you see, isn't it, love? Crikey, I hadn't thought of it in that light before. It seemed as if spontaneity was not part of the package then, and I was now beginning to see aspects of Operation Birthday Suit that were looking potentially fatal to its chances of success. But my thought about Mum's advice was that the chances of Lucy agreeing to her ask her mum were about nil, and in any case would put the operation into reverse. The whole idea was to seize the initiative by boxing Lucy in, not to surrender the decision to her completely. However, was there anything to stop me asking Mrs. Rawlings myself? After all, she was clearly fond of me and understood my unusual personality, I would say, exceptionally well. If she were to say yes, then I could just imagine how I could answer Lucy's main objection. I already asked your mum, Luce, and she's fine with it. She's even spoken to the doctor about you going on the pill. Now that would put her on the defensive, all right. She would be literally speechless. This was clearly the right course of action.